All right, Mob, good Monday morning. And you know what time it is? It is Coach Talk here on your 4th and 31 podcast. I'm your host, The Chad, and the man, the myth, the legend, and the coach. He's the reason it's named Coach Talk, Bo. And guys, before we get started, let's hit that like button. As we go along, kind of let us know what you think, because today we've got our last in our series of new coaching hires as we're going to split time between the ACC and the Big 12. As Bo kind of analyzes these guys, go along with us, follow us with this journey. Let us know what you think. Bo, you got anything to start us off?
No, man, just ready to get into it. I mean, I know we don't, especially on this network, we don't talk a ton about the ACC and the Big 12, but hey, it's a chance to talk college football and just to kind of look at the other side here and see what's going on.
All right, we'll get started here in just a second, but after we get done talking about the coaches, I was fortunate enough to go to the Bama game Saturday night. I also went to the baseball game Saturday afternoon. I had a long day Saturday. I didn't get home till dang near 2 a.m. because of all the rain, but it was a fun time in Coleman Coliseum. That place was packed and loud. We'll get into it after all this. So let's start in the ACC. Bo, let's start off with James Franklin to Virginia Tech. What you got?
As far as the three hires in the ACC, this is by far the best. Absolute home run for Virginia Tech. Here's why. He will rebuild that program. Frank Beamer built that program out of the scrap heap. Okay. Prior to Frank Beamer getting to Virginia Tech, it was a nothing program. And they actually played for a national championship one year. They lost to the Florida State Seminoles, played in the Sugar Bowl. And the fact that Virginia Tech would actually be able to play in a national championship at one point in college football history was a complete afterthought. So Frank Beamer and Bud Foster. Bud Foster was another guy, just lifetime defensive coordinator. And they had a ton of success there. Played in a lot of big games, had a lot of big battles with Miami back in the old Big East days, then came to the ACC. And ever since Frank Beamer has left, the trajectory of the program has just not been what it once was. James Franklin will get that back and get that back in a hurry. He will rebuild that program. Do not doubt James Franklin's ability to build a program. Now, playing in big games, playing against teams where he doesn't have the decided roster advantage, now that's a whole nother story. But as far as just building this team, he will build this team. Let's talk a little bit about we all know the acumen of James Franklin. Let's talk a little bit about his coordinators. His offensive coordinator is going to be Ty Howley. He's also the tight ends coach. Translation: they're going to run the ball. He's not going to come in. They're going to run some air raid, throw it every down. Whenever you see an offensive line coach or slash tight ends coach or somebody that was a run game coordinator somewhere, now all of a sudden they're the offensive coordinator. They want to establish the run first and foremost. And he's also going to serve as the tight ends coach. He was at Penn State from 20 to 25 with James Franklin. So Franklin's bringing him over. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Ed, pop quiz. Who was the previous coach at Virginia Tech that just got fired? The guy that just got fired. Do you remember his name?
You know what? I got in at 3 a.m.
Okay.
I'm sleepy.
So it was Brent Pry that was the head coach at Virginia Tech that just got fired. The James Franklin's new defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech is Brent Pry. I couldn't make this up. This is modern college football in a nutshell right here, ladies and gentlemen. We talked a couple of shows ago about like taboo things in college football should never happen. When college football was more regional, and basically you had your winner of your regional matchups, and then your winner in your regional matchups were basically playing bowl games. Okay. And we were specifically talking about the angle of Bill Oliver going to Auburn and about how everybody was just like, oh my God, that traitor. I can't believe he did that. So, but now, I mean, that no rules exist anymore. There's no such thing as regionality in college football. The rivalry angle really doesn't even exist to a large extent anymore. So all rules and all bets are off. So here was a guy that got fired by Virginia Tech as the head coach. James Franklin comes in and says, "Hey, don't just move your office over. You don't need to pack anything up. Just move it over to another office. You're going to be my defensive coordinator." And he is going to be the defensive coordinator, and also the starting quarterback for the Virginia Tech Hokies will be Ethan Grunkmeyer, who did a pretty good job in filling in last year. When the his name escapes me right at the second. When the starting quarterback at Penn State was injured, Grunkmeyer came in and did a pretty good job and was able to at least salvage the season enough to get Penn State to a bowl game amid the disaster that was their season. And then, of course, they got a bowl win in I think it was the Bronx Bowl against a Clemson team that had about 40 players that decided not to play. So at least Grunkmeyer and Penn State and those guys got to go out on a winning note. They got to play one more time and got to go out on a winning note. But you want a sneaky pick to win the ACC? Virginia Tech. Don't sit there and tell. I'm not being hyperbolic.
There we go.
I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, guys, this is like the NFL now. It's not the state your program's in. It's how is your team this year? Okay. So Virginia Tech right now, team wise, is in the best spot they've probably been in about 10 years. Okay. So, and you're talking about playing against some of these weak ACC defenses. As far as the the scouting goes, you're talking about a conference that only had about, I think it was like in the mid 40s of players this year with NFL draftable grades. So it's not like you're talking about a conference that's just loaded with top end talent. He will come in, he will have them, but maybe I'm being a little quick on it, but I'm just telling you, he will build that program up. He will build that program up quick. And if you just look at the quarterbacks in the conferences, he'll have one of probably the best 5 to 7 best quarterbacks in the conference. So I really like the move here by Virginia Tech. I think it's an absolute home run for the Hokies, and the Hokies will be toward the top of the ACC, if not this year, very, very quick.
Without a doubt. I mean, your second place team last year was like a 7-5 team? I mean, who won a whole bunch of tiebreakers.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Duke played for the conference championship game. They lost to UConn, guys. They lost to UConn. They lost. They hosted Illinois, which Illinois is okay. They were an 8-win team out of the Big Ten, but they're okay. But Duke was also -4 turnovers in that game. They actually, if I remember correctly, they actually outgained the Illini in that game. They just couldn't stop turning the ball over. They also got absolutely hammered by Tulane. Duke did. And they lost another one. They lost, I think they lost at least 3 out of conference games, maybe 4. And then of course, they got to the conference championship game, and Virginia, you could just see in that game the pressure on Virginia. As the longer Duke stayed in that game, the more the pressure shifted to Virginia, and they just cracked under the pressure. But again, that's what happens when a team that hasn't been there and a coach that hasn't been in that position.
Yeah, and with Miami kind of being the team in there, Miami, Virginia Tech, kind of like when Michael Vick was at Virginia Tech, you could have those two kind of going at it. And there was a couple of years where Virginia ran them out of the stadium, so that was kind of an odd rivalry. Now it's a conference rivalry, but I mean, that was kind of one of those odd rivalries in a game that you kind of looked forward to back in the early 2000s, because both teams
Absolutely.
were
If you go back to the
fun to
old
watch.
if you go back to the old Big East days, or even early when those Big East teams transitioned into the ACC, Boston College, when Tom O'Brien was the head coach, and had Matt Ryan at quarterback. You think about, again, Michael Vick at Virginia Tech. They had some really good teams. Miami was still a more than viable commodity before they went into the witness protection program for about the better part of 2 decades. Um, there were some really good games, some really good high end games in the Big Ten. NC State. They've traditionally given Florida State all kinds of problems, especially at home. And then you had the Florida State Seminoles. I mean, you probably had 6 or 8 teams in there every year. You're like, man, they're pretty solid, and it just hasn't been that way. I mean, think about it. You've probably got about 5 really viable teams in that conference as of right now. And the fact that Miami lost to SMU, they also lost another conference game. I can't remember who it was to, but but the fact that out of those top 5 teams, they still have they have enough firepower to remain competitive. So, but the conference as a whole needs to do a better job of setting their tiebreakers up to make sure the best teams can get into their conference championship game. Not a 5-loss Duke that gets hammered by UConn.
Yeah, that was crazy. It's
Embarrassing.
like
It's embarrassing for
it,
the conference.
and I'm pretty sure. I didn't read this, but I'm pretty sure their tiebreaker was throwing a dart at a dartboard and it hit Duke. So that's the rumor. All right, so I guess we can all agree James Franklin A+ for Vatek. Let's move on to Stanford with Tavita Pritchard. Bo, what you got on that one?
Stanford strikes me as it's a has-been program. I really hate to say that because there was a time when Jim Harbaugh and yes, I'm actually going to say something good about Jim Harbaugh. When Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford, and then David Shaw, there was a 10-year stretch there where they were like top 5 in the country in wins. The only thing they hadn't done was gone to the playoff. They went to 3 Rose Bowls, and they blew out Iowa one year in the Rose Bowl. They had a loss to Michigan State, but I think they went to 3 Rose Bowls in 4 years under David Shaw. And then they got to COVID. COVID destroyed that program. They were trying to recruit at Stanford without having to show you how ridiculous the rules were. They were trying to recruit football players onto their campus without having football players come onto the campus. And that's starting block number 1. And then starting block number 2, the whole thing in the ACC, it's not working out. It's just not. The logistics, the regionality. It's to me, it's not really working for Stanford. But Tavita Pritchard is the head coach. His offensive coordinator, Terry Heffernan, who came from Virginia. He was the offensive line run game coordinator, and he worked under David Shaw from 21 to 22. So I wouldn't be shocked if now you want to talk about somebody who could coordinate the run game was David Shaw. They would get in all these 3, 4, 5 tight end packages. 5 may be too many, maybe 4 tight ends, excuse me. And they would just get in all these just big personnel, and they would get in all these unbalanced sets, and they would really put a lot of pressure on you to shift around, and they would get your small guys to have to come up to take on their big guys. And they went through a stretch there where Stanford was just pumping out offensive linemen and defensive linemen, those box players into the NFL draft. And I would imagine if Heffernan is going to follow the same blueprint that David Shaw will follow, he's got a chance. Okay, they got a chance because it's hard to prep for that because football now is a game played in space, and when you take those space players that are a little smaller and a little quicker and you make them play around the line of scrimmage, well, that's not what they're good for. So it'll be interesting to see how Terry Heffernan decides to play his offense. And the defensive coordinator is going to be a guy named Chris Richard. Now, interestingly, here's a guy who has 13 years of NFL experience, and he was the Seattle Seahawks defensive coordinator from 2015 to 2017, and he was last with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2024. But if this tells you anything about and this is why I say this about getting back to the unbalanced, the power run game and just run, their quarterback is going to be Davis Warren. And if that name rings a bell, he was the quarterback at Michigan 2 years ago when they went 8-5 and they couldn't complete a pass. And then he basically got benched this year, and then the freshman came in and took over. So just knowing Davis Warren's acumen, his inability to really, push the ball down the field and make plays in the passing game, I would imagine they'll probably get back to that David Shaw unbalanced, lots of tight ends, lots of power running would make sense. Seeing as how they don't have the personnel. Although I will say this, Stanford last year at home was a decent tussle. I mean, they beat Florida State at home last year in a game that just saw Florida State time and time again just shoot themselves in the foot. I
Hey,
remember
that's
watching that game because again,
that's something Alabama couldn't do.
oh, absolutely. Well, and again, the ACC. This is another conference. We talked about this with the Big Ten. The travel. So Florida State went all the way out to Palo Alto. The game started at 9:00 local time and finished after midnight. So way off of their clock, way off of their schedule. And again, when you're making all these cross country flights, it matters, guys. If you've ever taken a long flight, it takes a couple of days. That jet lag is a real thing. And then to have to get up and go play football, especially, you see it all the time. Washington went and played Maryland. Maryland's awful. I mean, Maryland's absolutely terrible. Washington's pretty good. And Washington did nothing for 3 quarters, and they finally woke up in the last quarter. That was an 11 o'clock kickoff, 9 o'clock in Seattle, which meant everything they did, they probably got up 2 to 3 hours earlier than their body clock is used to. So, I mean, this travel stuff really matters. But just as a whole, I used to really like watching Stanford, especially when David Shaw was there, because when Harbaugh got there, they were absolutely terrible. And then he was able to bring in Andrew Luck. They turned the program around. And then David Shaw, they were really good under David Shaw. And then, of course, just like any coaching stint, toward the end, kind of started to fizzle out. COVID hits, program demolished, and they still have yet to rebuild. So I wish the guys out in Palo Alto all the best, and good luck.
Stay hydrated.
Yes,
right.
Please stay hydrated.
Not to steal something from Brent, but stay hydrated. All right. I saved the best for last. I saved this one on purpose for last because this is a guy that Bama fans either loved or hated, maybe a little bit in between.
It's here because Tosh Lupoy is the new head coach at Cal. And when
that's on me.
Yeah, that's okay. When he left Alabama, there was a big sigh of relief. And I'll never forget that championship game against Clemson where we got blown out. We just kept playing press man coverage, 4 down, didn't change anything. I mean, it was basically the same look every night. We had him in 3rd and long all night, and we ran press man, too high, and they just kept throwing back shoulder fades. And now granted, they were making some amazing catches. I mean, the one receiver, I forget his name, but he was from Phoenix City. He went to Clemson, but he literally caught a ball one-handed behind his head. I mean, some nights it's just not your night. But my whole process is, if that's all they're doing, take it away. Make them do something else. And it's just like, Tosh, what are you doing? So when he left the University of Alabama, there was a lot of people that were just like, whew, thank goodness he's gone. And then, of course, 2 years later, Bama wins the national championship. But Tosh Lupoy, 2 very interesting hires for his coordinators. And, we talk about, I've talked about on the show about guys that are grunts and guys that are gurus. And I would definitely have to say his 2 hires are, because, Tosh has NFL experience himself. He was a defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. But his 2 coordinators are both 30 years old, both come from NFL backgrounds, and this is the first time that they are really going to have high level coordinator jobs. The first one, the offensive coordinator, is Jordan Somerville. He's 30 years old. He just came from the Tampa Bay Bucks. He was the passing game coordinator and assistant QB coach. And I'll tell you why I like that hire, because of who the quarterback is. And if you don't know who this quarterback is, guys, you need to watch him. Okay. His name, let me get it right. Jaron Kawe Sagapulatele. He can spin it. He is really good. He was a freshman last year, and he started the entire season. And if you're not familiar with them, they did get it one big win at home. They beat the Minnesota Gophers at home, and he had a pretty good season. Okay, now the talent around him, not so much. Justin Wilcox out, Tosh Lupoy in. Again, this is the second time they with their hire at Cal, they've gone back to back defensive coaches as their hire. But I do like the fact he got Somerville, a passing game coordinator, to go with Sagapula who can spin it. Now the question is, can they get enough stops, and do they have enough around them to consistently move the ball? The defensive coordinator is Michael Hutchings. He is also 30 years old. And he was the Minnesota Vikings safeties coach. So both of these guys have NFL backgrounds. They were not coordinators in the NFL. I mean, full on coordinators, but they do have the NFL pedigree. And I tell you this, I love guys that have the NFL pedigree, because when you're coaching in the NFL, it's all about the fine line. I mean, because I was listening to a broadcast one time, and this has stuck with me about the NFL ever since I heard this. Tony Romo was talking about how almost all NFL games in the fourth quarter tighten up to one score. Most, not all, most, the majority. And it's about being able to find that one matchup in that one situation in that one coverage and make that one play to win the game. And if you look at most of these games, most NFL games are separated by 8 points or fewer, one score. So when I look at these coaches that have that NFL background, and especially that are going to teams that don't have as much talent, I think they have an advantage because they're used to trying to find that fine edge. And here they are, maybe they don't quite have the talent, but maybe they can look at it and go, okay, I got this guy that can do this, so we're only going to ask him to do this. I mean, it's not like you got a team full of 4 and 5 stars. You just say, hey, boys, just go get them. Where you really got to scheme week to week to try to find ways to get receivers open, to try to have success in the run game, to try to find a blocking scheme that works. And it may be a thing where you have to change possession by possession within the game to find it. And I like these guys like this because they're used to doing that. They're used to constantly having to make tweaks in the NFL because it's such a fine line. So we'll see how the Cal Bears do. I do like this. I think I like this pairing with this offensive coordinator and the quarterback. I think they could score a lot of points. And I think also with Lupoy's experience in the NFL and Hutchings' also experience with defenses in the NFL, maybe they can do something. They can find something. They can run some type of these trap coverages, combo coverages, where they can change the picture just enough to try to help their guys, put them in the right place to make a few plays. 6-6 would be great for these guys, just to get back to a bowl game, get those 10 extra practices like we've talked about, and to get the Cal Bears program. It's always bothered me that the largest public school in the state of California has been awful at football the last 20 years. I mean, really, ever since Aaron Rodgers left and Marshawn Lynch, I mean, they've done nothing. I mean, this is a program that's just kind of floundered away. I mean, they've had some okay seasons, but I would just think that the largest public school in a state like California could be more competitive. But what do I know?
More than most. All right, let's move on to the Big 12.
Well, hold on. Before we move on, I got some notes and some observations on the ACC. I want to take just a couple minutes and talk a little bit about the ACC overall. The 3 best odds to win the national championship are Miami. Miami's at 15-1. I love that ticket because of Mensa. Now I'm not going to get into all the tampering and whatever, but Mensa at Miami with that offense, they should be more explosive this year, especially with the Tony kid. The backfield's back. The line of scrimmage is mostly intact. Now they're taking some big hits on defense. Okay, we're losing Bain and what's the other defensive end's name? Bain and forget his name. Anyway, the two defensive ends that cause so much havoc for the Hurricanes this year. You lose those two guys, but I mean, overall, Miami's still in good shape. They've got the best roster in the ACC. Second best odds are, shockingly, Clemson and then SMU. Clemson at 88-1 and SMU at 111-1. So if this just tells you what Vegas sees on the national perspective, there's really only one team that has in their opinion, that has a shot. But you got Miami, you got SMU at 111-1. Kevin Jennings back for his 48th season, it seems like. He's been very productive, dual threat guy. Remember, he was the starter 2 years ago when they went to the playoff. Louisville, Lincoln Keenholz, transferring from Ohio State. Seems like Ohio State took some big hits. They took some hits at receiver. They took some hits at defensive back in the portal, but, Ohio State will be fine. But with Lincoln Keenholz, Brom always seems to maximize his quarterbacks. He is a quarterback guru. Okay, don't ever doubt Jeff Brom and his ability to coach. Now, I also did two different things: the risers and the fallers in the conferences. So my risers, I have 4 of them. We've already talked about Virginia Tech. I'm not going to go any more into them, but Georgia Tech with head coach Brent Key. Now they had Alberto Mendoza transfer in from Indiana. Yes, Francisco Mendoza's brother. But they also got a 6'4", 210-pound, highly recruited quarterback named Cole Bergeron. Listen for him. He was the number 20 quarterback in the country coming out. He was number 12 prospect in the state of Louisiana. Don't be shocked at all if Brent Key goes ahead and rolls the dice and goes with him, because the word on the streets is that the Ramblin' Wreck really likes him. Okay. Also, you got we already talked about Virginia Tech. Wake Forest with Jake Dickert as the head coach. His quarterback this year is going to be Gio Lopez. Gio Lopez went to James Clemens High School, South Alabama, started for a year, I believe. Jay's up, baby. Left there, went to the disaster known as the North Carolina Tar Heels, although they were a little bit better the second half of the season. And then now he's going to Wake Forest. Now, Jake Dickert, he went 8-4 in the regular season, and they played a 5-win Mississippi State team in their bowl game. And let's face it, the only reason Mississippi State went to a bowl game because about 10 teams said we're not playing. And they beat Mississippi State. And he did all that with oh God, his name just escaped me. The quarterback that transferred from Auburn. He was so bad at Auburn, and then he left. And he ends up landing on his feet at Wake Forest, and he ends up winning 9 games with him. So if Jake Dickert can win 9 games with Chad, do you remember the quarterback I'm talking about? He was at Auburn. He transferred. He went to Hoover. He originally went to Oregon and then transferred. They ended up at Auburn. I think he started like 1 year. He was kind of in and out of the lineup.
What? It wasn't that Ashton kid.
No, not Ashton Daniels. He was the starter the year we beat him so bad. DeBoer's first year at Bama when we beat him so bad in Tuscaloosa. He was the starter in that game.
Yeah, his name escapes me too.
Yeah, his name just escapes me right. Robbie Ashford. Robbie Ashford.
Yeah, Ashford. Yeah. Ashton Ashford. That's the guy I was thinking of.
So Jake Dickert wins 9 games with Robbie Ashford, and now he's getting a much more accomplished passer with Gio Lopez. Look, if Duke with 5 losses can manufacture their way into the conference championship game, don't close your eyes on Wake Forest this year. Because there's no telling what could happen. You never know when Miami or one of these top teams in the conference is going to go and lay an egg somewhere, and then all of a sudden somebody wins the game they're not supposed to, and then boom, they're right back in the standings. And now with college football, it's like the NFL, guys. You go, you turn your roster over, you bring some new talent in, and you don't ever know who's going to do what. And then also Virginia with Tony Elliott, his quarterback this year is going to be Bo Pribula. Started at Penn State, transferred to Missouri, and now he's going to Virginia. And Virginia was in that conference championship game last year. And like I said earlier, you just see the longer that game went on, the tighter they got, and the pressure just got to them, and they couldn't seal the deal. But Virginia is spending money in NIL. They've got one of the bigger collectives in all of college sports. They were in the top 25 with their collective. You know, Tony Elliott, very good offensive coach. And if you notice, ever since Tony Elliott's left Clemson, how Clemson's offenses have performed since he left. And my two followers, I mean, I think this is pretty obvious. It's Clemson and Florida State. In 2023, okay, Clemson was 18-1 to win the national championship. That put them about sixth or seventh. Very respectable. Florida State was 7-1 at that time. Okay. And also Florida State went undefeated that year and, of course, got left out and then got drummed by Georgia in their bowl game. So in 2 years fast forward 3 years, Clemson's gone from 18-1 to 88-1 to win the national championship. Florida State has gone from 7-1 to 136-1 to win the national championship. And they have a new offensive coordinator. Now, what they did, they promoted from within, which I thought they would do. Guy named Tim Harris got promoted from within the program because the timing that Malzahn left, I mean, he gonna go get at that point. You know, I mean, it's almost impossible to go find somebody to come in after they've already recruited the players for that system. So they promoted from within. So those are my two big followers because you just look at that, it's like their programs have just fallen off a cliff. Vegas sees it, but it's just like last year, Florida State, I think they finished 38th in the Vegas poll. You know, Vegas was saying, hey, Florida State, you got some talent, but you keep stubbing your toe. You keep getting in your own way. And they went 5-7, but they finished, I think, 38th in the Vegas power poll, and they had a top 25 offense and a top 10 offense and a top 25 defense. Go figure.
All right. So now we'll move on to the Big 12. We got 4 to talk about. Any particular order, Bo? We got 3 states and a Utah. How about
I'm going to save my best 2 for last. Because
all right.
The next 2 I like even more than the James Franklin hired to Virginia Tech.
Okay. So
we'll start with Iowa State and Jimmy Rogers. This just smells like a 4-8 season. I mean, half the program left. I mean, once Matt Campbell left and went to Penn State and all the players started transferring out, they seriously had like 20 players in the football program left. So I don't know how it's going to work for Jimmy Rogers. I mean, he was the head coach at South Dakota State in 23 and 24. He was the head coach at Washington State in 25, and now he's at Iowa State. His offensive coordinator is going to be Tyler Roll. He's the running backs coach. He was the running backs coach at Iowa State in 24. He was with the Detroit Lions in 25 as the tight ends coach, and he's bringing him back. So here's a guy familiar with the program, familiar with the area, familiar with the recruiting. Okay, that's big. His defensive coordinator is going to be Jesse Bobbitt, who's going to implement a 4-2-5, which I think probably works better in the Big 12, considering it's a passing league. It's not, when I watch the Big 12, it's not a real physical league. It's not a real downhill running kind of league. It's running wide, perimeter screens, throwing the football. It's just a different brand of football. Not saying it's bad. It's just different. He worked under head coach Rogers at South Dakota State and at Washington State. Now, one thing I do like is they got Arkansas State quarterback transfer Jalen Rayner. He was the he was the Sun Belt Conference Freshman of the Year. His freshman year, he's a 3-year starter, played in a ton of games, and was very productive at Arkansas State. Played in some bowl games, went on the road, played, I believe, actually, they played Iowa State this past season. I believe it was, they played somebody out of the Big 12, and it was a good ball game. They lost, but it was good and competitive. And I really like Jalen Rayner, but it feels to me like Iowa State is about to go back to Iowa State pre-Matt Campbell. The program just got raided. Everybody left. I mean, the building emptied, and they're starting over. If you had to tell me who do I think would finish last in the conference, I would buy a ticket on Iowa State. And it's nothing personal. I just don't know. And especially, it would be different if most of the players stayed, maybe a couple left. But most of the roster was still intact, and he was inheriting a good roster. But I don't know that their recruiting was not all that great. Their portal was not, we're talking north of 40. A lot of new faces. So we'll see. And the worst part for Jimmy Rogers is he's replacing an absolute legend. I mean, for that university, Matt Campbell elevated that program in a way that nobody has been able to do. And now you got to follow that guy, but you got to start all over. So we'll see what happens. I wish Jimmy Rogers the best. The good news for him is that the Big 12 had the fewest of the four major conferences, had the fewest of NFL draftable players. So it's not as if every week you're going to be going up against these juggernaut teams, these juggernaut defenses, that, everybody is just has so much more talent than you. So Jimmy Rogers, staff, Cyclone Nation, hang in there, and we'll see what happens.
And hey, Iowa State hadn't seen that much success since Seneca Wallace, since Alabama beat him in the Independence Bowl that year.
Seneca Wallace could go now.
Oh, he was good.
Seneca Wallace could play.
Yeah. No, he was good. He was real fun to watch. All right. Next one. I think I know your two. So we'll go to Oklahoma State. Seth Morris? Yeah.
Yes. Eric Morris, not to be confused with Zach Morris. That's a 90s joke for those of you that are our age. Here's a guy that went 35-32 at North Texas, and now he's been elevated to Oklahoma State. Now, however, at North Texas, you're not exactly getting the cream of the crop. You have to, in a lot of cases, get second, third, and fourth tier players that nobody else is recruiting. Example, his quarterback last year, who was following him, which I actually like. I actually like this. But his quarterback that's following him, Drew Mestemaker, did not even play quarterback in high school. He was a no-star recruit. He was a walk-on at North Texas, and he proceeded to lead the American Conference in almost every passing category. So I like that. Here's a guy who obviously is very coachable, very smart. Eric Morris obviously figured out a way for Drew Mestemaker to be successful. Again, you're coming into a wide open league that is a passing league. It is a scoring league. Okay? These games routinely are, you got to get to 38 to win. Okay? Let's see. Eric Morris, he was a head coach at Incarnate Word. He was or as a friend of mine once said, NCRT Word. But he was a head coach at Incarnate Word. He was the offensive coordinator at Washington State, and he leaves there and he goes to North Texas. So this is a guy that I would definitely put in the guru category. And that didn't spend a ton of time as an assistant, but he started his coaching career in 2010 at Houston, and then he went to Texas Tech. So here's a guy that understands Big 12 football. And he also played at Texas Tech. So if he probably played during the Mike Leach days, and again, understanding that air raid system. Now, the one thing I love about the air raid system is you really have to learn about spacing and passing concepts. Okay. I don't agree with throwing the ball every down. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I love the screen games within the air raid system. But being able to understand those spacing and concepts, the spacing and timing concepts and moving people around on the field, there's some really good stuff in there. And actually, when I was coaching, there was some stuff I ran that was actually because we ran a lot of crossers, especially in high school football. Anything across the field he's going to come open at some point. It's can you hold up long enough? But having the crosser, having the over the top route, I would run a combination like that, but on the same side of the field. So it's a one. You're reading that one safety on that side of the field. So a lot of good things here from Eric Morris. I do like this hire, and it was time for the Magic Mullet to move on, and Magic Mullet being Mike Gundy. He once was a man. He once was 40, and it's time for him to move on now. Get some new blood in there and to take the program in a new direction. His offensive coordinator is going to be Sean Brophy. He also was at Washington. He was at Washington State and at North Texas with him. His defensive coordinator is Skylar Cassity, who was at Abilene Christian in 2022 and 2023, Sam Houston in 24, at North Texas in 25. So this coaching staff, they do have familiarity with each other. They've worked together. He's bringing the guys with him. It's a wide open league. Now, we obviously know who the two big dogs in that conference are. But that with their offensive acumen and what they're going to bring, they brought some of the good skill players from North Texas with them. They ought to be able to do some damage, especially right away with that offense.
All right. So we got two left. We got your favorite two, your big two, as you called them. Whichever one you want to start off with, man. This is your show. Who do you want to go with first?
I would like to go with Utah. This is my second favorite hire of the entire offseason. Morgan Scalley. If you don't know anything about Morgan Scalley, this guy is a grunt. And I say this with the biggest smile on my face and with the most passion for college football that I can. Because here's a guy that he is a grunt. He has been at the University of Utah as a player and a coach since 1. He's worked on the defensive side of the ball. He was an All-American. He was a second-team All-American at Utah. And that was back in the Mountain West days when Utah wasn't getting any coverage. Okay? He was a heck of a player. And the prodigal son returns. He coaches on the defensive side of the ball. He was the defensive coordinator. Kyle Whittingham goes to Michigan, and in steps Morgan Scalley. I could see Morgan Scalley pulling another Kyle Whittingham because Morgan Scalley's only like in his mid-40s, maybe 42, 45, somewhere in there. I could see him keeping this program very viable in the Big 12 and staying at Utah for 15 to 20 years and then maybe just retiring. I mean, this is a guy that just seems like he just bleeds Utah, just loves Utah. Again, that's the only place he's been for the better part of almost 3 decades. So, but he was a safety. He played safety. He coached the safeties. Let's see. His offensive coordinator is a guy named Kevin McGivern, who has 25 years of coaching experience. He's been 17 years as an offensive coordinator. So here's a guy who knows his way around and around that area. He was at Utah State. So now he just comes over to Utah. So he knows the area. He knows the recruiting. He knows the universities out there. And he knows his way around a call sheet too, which I really like. His defensive coordinator is Colton Swan. He coached at, I can't even read them on right in there. He coached linebackers, and he's been at Utah since 2019. So I love this hire right here is the epitome of college football. This takes me back to the days when college football was regional and rivalry still meant something. I mean, this guy is absolutely perfect for Utah. I don't think they're going to miss a beat. I know it's hard to replace a legend, but here's a guy that the University of Utah and the football program probably means as much to him as his own wife and children. So I love this hire. I expect great things from Morgan Scalley, and I just freaking love that name, Morgan Scalley. That just sounds like a guy I'd want to go play football for.
Scally, hey, he probably have a group of fans called the
The
Scallywags.
Scallywags, no doubt. Any Utah fans out there, I'm sure you probably already have that out there in Salt Lake City, but if you don't and you're watching the show and you want to use this, go right ahead. No problem for me.
Hey,
That's
not at
your
all.
guy. That's your guy.
All right, so I guess we'll
Now,
save your favorite for last. Kansas State.
the Kansas State Wildcats and Colin Klein.
Optimus Klein.
Yeah, Colin Klein. So Colin Klein, he comes over from Texas A&M, where he was offensive coordinator. Here was a guy, when we talk about the dual threat quarterbacks, probably the most celebrated dual threat quarterbacks in college football history. Cam Newton, rightfully so, won a natty. Tim Tebow won a natty. And they play in a conference that, has been, and especially at the time, was at the top of college football, and they're on national television week in, week out, playing in huge games, big ranked opponents. But Colin Klein is probably one of the top 5 all-time dual threat quarterbacks in college football. He went 21-5 as a starter at Kansas State. You sit there and go, well, it's the Big 12. That was also when Texas and Oklahoma were in the Big 12. And the Big 12 was a little bit, in my opinion, more competitive, especially on a national stage. But if you've never seen there was a documentary that came out. It was called Miracle in Manhattan, and it was about Bill Snyder building out of the ash heap the Kansas State football program. Now, the Kansas State football program was so bad, so destitute, such a wasteland for college football, that they nearly lost their Division I membership because their attendance was so low. They were regularly losing to Division II schools like Louisiana Tech, North Texas. They were Division II at the time. And it was said that if you wanted to go to a Kansas State game, just get there 10 minutes before kickoff. You can park in the front, walk right up to the ticket window with no line, buy a 50-yard line seat, and watch the game. The only time they ever had fans is when they played like a Texas or an Oklahoma, and they'd bring 15,000 fans with them. Other than that, nobody went to Kansas State games. They were pitiful. But that is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen about college football. It is phenomenal. And there's a lot of notable names in there that you all as college football fans will recognize. So for him to, at 21, because the first player I think of when I think of Kansas State, I think of Michael Bishop. Michael Bishop was the first quarterback to put them in a position to potentially go play for a national championship. Remember that Big 12 championship they lost to Texas A&M, and not even a very good Texas A&M team, but they just didn't play well. They got beat. And then, of course, Darren Sproles, because we're Saints fans. But as far as production, number 2 right there is Colin Klein. So he goes 21-5. He was a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. He was the Big 12 Player of the Year in 2012. Again, you still got Texas and Oklahoma there recruiting on a national level. In his career in 2 years, this is unbelievable. He had 56 rushing touchdowns. Okay. And I had to take a picture of this because his stats are unbelievable. He was 21-5 as a starter in the 2011 season. He led Kansas State to a 10-3 record. He passed for 1,900 yards and 13 touchdowns. He rushed for 1,140 yards and had 27 rushing touchdowns. Then in 2012, he comes back and he led Kansas State to an 11-2 record. He had 2,650 passing yards 16 passing touchdowns, 16 passing touchdowns, 920 rushing yards, and 23 touchdowns, 23 rushing touchdowns. And a lot of people don't even. Oh, who was Colin Klein? He was an amazing player. If you never got to see him play or you didn't watch him play, he was great. And for him to he elevated that program to a stature. Like I said, Michael Bishop, they had that one team, but he put them into national relevance on a regular basis. Okay. So enough about him. He was he was the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator at Kansas State in 2017 to 23. He was at A&M in 24 and 25. This year's offensive coordinator is going to be a guy named Sean Gleason. He was the quarterback's coach at Missouri for 24 and 25. He was the OC at Rutgers, Oklahoma State, and Princeton. Now, I love the fact he was at Princeton. And the reason is because Princeton doesn't have the most dynamic athletes. You have to really be creative and find ways to try to get those guys the ball sometimes and really be able to X and O it. You got to really be able to scheme it. His defensive coordinator is going to be Jordan Peterson. He was the co-defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach from Texas A&M. So some of those really good coaches that helped Texas A&M get into the playoff last year, they're now at Kansas State. And also one final thing to this, his quarterback is going to be Avery Johnson. Avery Johnson, I think if there is a coach in the country that could utilize his skill set best, it would be Colin Klein. Avery Johnson came in. He was a legit 4.4 40 guy playing the quarterback position, but his passing skills had not developed kind of like, the Kansas State Wildcats had hoped under the previous coaching staff. But in my opinion, they were asking him to throw too much. If Colin Klein will run a similar system to what Bill Snyder ran with him at Kansas State, I am telling you, they could be toward the top of the conference. Because if you have a quarterback like a Colin Klein that can be that dominant, you got a quarterback that runs legit 4.4, figure out ways to get him the ball on the perimeter. Figure out ways to put him in dynamic run spots. And I think they will. And if they do, Kansas State could rapidly be toward the top of the conference. Because, again, you got the top two. You got Texas Tech, you got BYU. And outside of that, it's a crapshoot, guys. So I really love the hire. This is my favorite hire this offseason, my favorite one. And especially paired up with the coordinators he has, with the quarterback he has coming back. Kansas State could really be one of the sneaky teams in the Big 12 this year. Also, real quick, the best two odds to win the national championship, Texas Tech at 14.5 to 1, and then BYU at 75 to 1. Okay. So really, in Vegas's eyes, there's only one team that even has a shot. But some of the risers and fallers in the conference, some of the risers, we just talked about Kansas State, they're definitely a riser. Houston with Willie Fritz, he's got Connor Wigman back. They won 9 games last year. Okay, I don't really think everybody kept talking about BYU and Texas Tech, and a lot of people didn't look at the Houston Cougars. They also beat LSU in their bowl game. Now, granted, LSU had about 15 players that didn't play. Makes a difference. No head coach. There was a whole bunch of mess going on. But to Houston's credit, they went out on the field, won the game. Also, too, he had a 5-star quarterback coming in, last name Henderson. So that'll really help elevate the Houston program. Rich Rod, my favorite hire last year, he's going to be in year 2. He's going to have a good quarterback battle between Scotty Fox and Michael Hawkins. Now, I think Michael Hawkins is an interesting fit. The Oklahoma transfer, he didn't really work out at Oklahoma because he didn't really fit their offense. But Rich Rod, his offense is centered around a dual threat running quarterback. Michael Hawkins could be really effective in that offense. My 2 biggest fallers, Baylor, Dave Aranda's about to get fired. Remember, they played Auburn last year in that first game, and Auburn just mauled them at the line of scrimmage. I think Auburn had about 325 yards rushing, and they couldn't stop Auburn at all. Auburn just turned around, handed the ball off, ran the ball all the way down the field, up and down the field all night. And then, of course, Iowa State. I mean, their program just got decimated. Just decimated. We just talked about that. So that's kind of a little bit of a look at the Big 12 and some of the hires I like and don't like, and maybe. And I'm gonna tell you this: I would, again, when I'm looking at futures odds, I don't want to bet. I don't necessarily like taking the favorite, or I certainly don't like taking the negative money. But I mean, I would definitely look at Houston winning the conference. You'll get a good price on Houston because everybody's talking about Texas Tech. Everybody's in love with the Sorsby guy that went 6-6 at Cincinnati. So, and I don't even know how much better the personnel on offense is going to be for the Red Raiders. But I would look at Utah. I would look at Houston, and if you're really feeling saucy, I would also look at the West Virginia Mountaineers.
Yeah, I think West Virginia is a little underrated right now. One thing about Kansas State, that's where the term the Wildcat came from. So anytime you see somebody lined up in the Wildcat, that originally came from Kansas State back in the mid 90s. Teams just kind of adapted. Arkansas ran the Wild Hog. Alabama kind of has the Wild Tide. They kind of named it after their own mascot.
Yeah,
But the Wildcat actually came from Kansas State.
yeah. I'll tell you what, the team that probably ran it the best was Arkansas. 'Cause
Oh God,
You
yeah,
had Felix Jones, Darren McFadden, and Peyton Hillis all on the
yeah,
field at the same time.
yeah.
I mean, guys, they look, when I tell you they didn't even have a quarterback on the field at times, they didn't even have a quarterback. There's like no threat of a pass, and nobody can stop them. Well, of
Yeah.
course, Darren McFadden, in my opinion, is a top 5 player all time in Southeastern Conference history on offense. He's unbelievable. I mean, Bo and Herschel, you can put them 1A and 1B. Okay. Darren McFadden ain't far behind. And
No,
for him to do it in with very limited help from a quarterback in a passing game, and then on top of that, having to share the ball with 2 other running backs that were 1,000+ yard rushers in the NFL and all pros, he was phenomenal.
yeah. Wasn't even close to the best. As an Alabama fan, I was glad when all three of them jokers were gone
Oh, and
because
then
that
they had
means,
Houston
yeah,
Nutt. Houston Nutt was
yeah,
just like, it was like backyard football. Hey guys, let's try this, man. Just try this, see what happens. Dude, he
yeah,
was all about it. He loved it. He was, for that personnel, for what they had, he was probably the perfect coach for them right at that time. We talk about all the time fit. How do you fit? And using all your pieces and personnel. And it's like Auburn 2004, that team that went undefeated and didn't play for the national championship, which the only reason that happened was because USC and Oklahoma started 1-2 and finished 1-2. They both went undefeated. So, but I'm sitting there thinking you got Jason Campbell, you got 3 running backs. There was also Brandon Jacobs was on that team too. How do you not have Brandon Jacobs, Ronnie Brown, and Cadillac Williams on the field all at the same time? How do you not? And Auburn never did that.
yeah,
I couldn't understand that.
yeah. And it was kind of more of a running league at the
Yeah,
time.
at the time it was still more of a running league. Because you got to understand, it wasn't until Steve Spurrier in the '90s got to Florida that he was the first coach to really come in and open the thing up. And you know, a lot of teams were kind of slow to adjust, and then teams just kind of started gradually. And then then Urban Meyer came in running his spread option offense, and then the offense has just really started to evolve after that.
Yeah, and if you want to look at it that way with the passing, Alabama didn't adjust to that pretty much until Kiffin got there. We were still, running the ball, running the ball. You had AJ McCarron, who was a gunslinger. Any other offense, and he probably would have set records at a college
Yeah,
the way he could sling it.
you think about it, if AJ got to play under Kiffin, or
Phew,
if he got to play under Sark,
good lord.
where he could actually could actually get back in the pocket and get in a rhythm and really deliver the ball and throw it down the field on a more continuous basis. I mean, he could have been he could have been every bit as good, in my opinion. He could have been every bit as good as those guys because I mean, you go back to some of the games that he had, games where he had to throw, and he did, and he produced against high level competition. I still think about that Georgia SEC championship game where they go play pass, and not only did he have like a 90 something yard touchdown pass against Auburn that year, like a 98-yard touchdown
Yeah.
pass, and then
Yep.
they had that big one against Georgia where they went play pass and won the game. Um, AJ did not get enough credit for being as talented as he was.
No,
Um,
well, actually, go back the year before when they played LSU in the championship game. The second time they played them, they opened it up just a little bit, and he was throwing all over the Honey Badger that game.
oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, he made him look foolish
oh
in that
yeah.
championship game.
They threw a couple. He threw a couple passes in that game that just, I mean, and again, we didn't score. We didn't score a ton of points because LSU's defense was low. I mean, they were
Didn't need
low.
to.
We didn't need
Didn't
to.
need to.
I mean, legitimately, if some of you out there don't know what we're talking about, that championship game where Alabama played LSU, LSU crossed midfield one time, and then the next play they got sacked and never crossed midfield again.
One play.
One play across midfield, and that is no exaggeration. I mean, you can't get in the I formation against Alabama and think you're going to beat them. You just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's a topic for a different show. But before we go, I want to talk about the day I had Saturday. For Christmas, my daughter got me tickets to the Iron Bowl of basketball. Went there. Bama had a game supposed to have a baseball game at 2. Well, luckily my daughter was up early. She saw that it was at 12. So we had a long day Saturday. Well, I think we left the house about 7:30. Didn't get back to the house till about 1:30 a.m. Baseball team, I had a good 7-2 win, 9-2 win. Bullpen, nah, too many walks, man, for me. Luckily they were playing North Florida and they could afford to walk and get away with it. Uh, had a great time there. Went to the basketball game. First in line, got a couple of free jerseys. Let me tell you this, Coleman Coliseum, that place was rocking for about 30 minutes. And until we got up till about, I mean, the game was out of reach. I mean, the game was over at halftime. Let's be honest. I mean, Alabama came in there, kicked ass, and then I guess put it on cruise control in the second half. But you could tell about halfway through that second half, the fans started dying down a little bit, and Alabama kind of lost their edge. Fans, we got to do better. I mean, this is Auburn. This is the Iron Bowl of basketball. We got a top 15 team. I understand you're up by 20 plus points, but yeah, we got to stay loud the entire game, guys, even if we're up by 25, 30 points. But nonetheless, a huge win. I mean, that play, if you've never been to a home basketball game with Nate Oates and that whole system he runs, and, people say they live and die by the three. Let me tell you something. They didn't shoot the three good Saturday night, but they had about 50 points in the paint, which is unlike them. So,
Yeah,
as
Chad,
much as
there was one point you probably couldn't see this, but on the broadcast, there was one point where Auburn had 42 points and Bama had 46 points in the paint.
no, I mean, yeah, I can't keep track of that obviously in the stadium, but I'm glad you brought that up because I love basketball. I love Bama's basketball just as much as their football team. I played basketball. I played it in high school. I never played football. I love basketball. So one of my tiny, tiny criticisms with Oates was, you know, it looked like they do kind of live and die by the three at times. And that game against Auburn proved they can be a very dangerous team going forward. If they can score that many points in the paint, kind of, the three wasn't working. Well, guess what? We got other ways to score. And if they can keep that up, I know they lost to Georgia on the road Tuesday after an emotional win, against Tennessee, coming back against them the way they played. I expected them not to play good against Georgia. Followed it up, a home game, came out lights out for about 30 minutes. I mean, it got me goosebumps because I love Alabama basketball. The next time they play Friday, they get the double bye. They got the two seed. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully they can play a few games, get a 3 or 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and hopefully make a run to at least the Elite Eight. I think that's That's the minimum for this team going forward with Nate Oates. So
Yeah, well, the last month they have made a concerted effort to get the ball inside. And it's really changed their season, because at one point early in the season they were just shooting too many threes. And then, but you can obviously tell, and we talked about this on the show, about you got to have more than one way to win. You know, I remember distinctly one time, it was West Virginia, and they were playing in the tournament, and that was when Bob Huggins was there, and Charles Barkley, I think it was Charles Barkley, was talking about West Virginia, and he said, "Look," he said, "here's their problem. Here's why they're not going far in the tournament at all." He said they may win this first game. They were playing Stephen F. Austin. It was when Stephen F. Austin had that real good team. The coach that's at Illinois now, Brett Underwood, I think it was Brett. But anyway, Coach Underwood was at Stephen F. Austin. He said the only way they can beat you is to speed you up and turn you over. And if Stephen F. Austin takes care of the ball, they win this game. And Stephen F. Austin just beat their eyeballs shut. They didn't turn the ball over. They just took care of the ball, and they executed their offense, and they didn't let West Virginia play their style of basketball. And that's very true. When you get in these tournaments, you know, it's all about guard play and putting the biscuit in the basket. The teams and the teams that can do that in the most versatile way are the ones that are going to go deep in the tournament. It's just that simple. Oh, hey, and I wanted to say one other thing, Chad. You were talking about college baseball. I wanted to just look at the top 25 of college baseball right now. There's only one team in the Big Ten rated in the top 25, and that's UCLA. They're ranked number 1. Number 2, LSU. 3, Texas. 4, Mississippi State. 5, Georgia Tech. 6, Arkansas. 7, Auburn. 8, North Carolina. 9, Florida. 10, Southern Miss. 11, Georgia. 12, Oklahoma. 13, NC State. 14, Clemson. 15, Wake Forest. 16, Coastal Carolina. 17, TCU. 18, Oregon State. 19, Tennessee. 20, Florida State. 21, Kentucky. 22, Texas A&M. 23, West Virginia. 24, Miami. 25, UTSA. Now, I'm not saying that to take a shot at anybody, but I have always believed.
yes, you are.
Well, no, I've always believed that baseball is always better in the South and out West because of the weather. I mean, it's you can legitimately play baseball in January here in the South. It's hard to play baseball in Madison, Wisconsin in January. Like when I was working with the baseball team of the South, now this was years ago, but when I was working with the baseball team of the South, we had our Coke Classic. And that one particular year, we had it when Coach Kitcher was there. We had the Coke Classic almost every year. But it was us, Southern Miss, Northwestern out of the Big Ten, and then St. John's. And the two teams that got just pulverized in that tournament were Northwestern and St. John's. I mean, we beat St. John's, I think 19-1. I think they eventually just stopped the game like in the 8th inning because St. John's was running out of pitching. And I was talking to their clubhouse guy the year before, before the game, and he said that when they played that game against us, that was the first time they had been on a baseball field this year. Yeah. We practice outside every day. We're outside every day practicing. And then Northwestern, I mean, we beat them. I think we beat them like 15-7. I mean, we just bombed them. And then, so they gave up 15 runs to us. Then they played Southern Miss. And I think Southern Miss beat them. It was like a football score. It was like 21-14 or something. And yeah, I mean, the two Northern teams in those 3 games gave up like 19, 14, and 21. But again, Northwestern hadn't, they're from in Illinois. So they hadn't been outside much either, if at all. So, and I've always said that about baseball. It's so much better in the South and out West just because of the weather. And it's like this World Baseball Classic that's going on. The Dominican, why are they so good? Because all they play is baseball, and they play year round, and they practice more than they play. And meaning they are working on their craft more than they're playing games. As where the American model now is, it's all this travel ball nonsense that's just ruining these kids, and they play more games than they practice. So then you wonder why they're not developing a lot of the skills necessary because they don't work at it. So
Yep.
anyway, that's just my
And
2 cents on that.
and then one other thing before we go, what was your stat about the Big Ten baseball last time they won a national championship?
Well, yeah, it was 1966. It was the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh,
Um,
so that was before me or you were born.
Long time. The actually, 13 years before,
Yeah.
and I was interested. I'm just so interested in college athletics. I love college football is the greatest sport that's ever been created. But I started looking at the number of championships, because clearly there's no doubt the SEC and the Big Ten have been the two biggest conferences in college sports in certainly the last 50, 60 years with ease. And now I looked at the three major men's sports, and between the three major men's sports, and since I've been alive, which is 47 years, the SEC has won 48 national championships. Then I went a step further and I looked at the two major sports by the girls, softball and basketball. That's another 17 national championships right there. And I think Tennessee's girls have won like 8 national championships. The great Pat Summitt, not just one of the great girls coaches, one of the great all-time coaches in college history for any sport, male or female. And so, that's what 65 national championships between the 5 major sports in college and the SEC, was just downright. I couldn't believe it. I was like, man, and we're not even talking about secondary sports, soccer, lacrosse, or of course Bama plays hockey now, or swimming or diving or anything like that. But I couldn't believe that I started reading, because I've long regarded the Big Ten as one of the best basketball conferences in the country. It is every year. Watch them in the postseason. I think they got about 8 teams that'll get in, and I think there's probably 3 or 4 I think could win the national championship. But the Big Ten hadn't won a basketball championship since 2000? Michigan State? Team Cleaves, a great team, a very young Tom Izzo at that time. But they've played for the championship, I think, 8 times since. I mean, you played for 8 titles in 25 years. I mean, that's pretty reputable. But they're 0-8, and I've always regarded the Big Ten as one of the best basketball conferences. It just kind of stunned me when I looked at that. And baseball wise, the last time they played for national championship was in Michigan, finished runner up. I forget what year it was. It's pretty recent. It's pretty recently. It's been in the last couple of years. Michigan got to the finals of the College World Series, but did not win. But like I said, it is 1966. The Ohio State Buckeyes was the last baseball championship, and I couldn't believe that. I thought that was that. I just thought for sure there would have been some teams, in the past that would have produced more. But anyway, just and it's interesting. It's like if you look at the college football national championships, you can clearly see where football starts in the Midwest and up north, and then it eventually spreads out. It goes to the West and then the South, and it's interesting if you just study that stuff and just watch the patterns in the history and how college athletics spread out. It's you start your initial national champions, at 1885, they go 5-1 or 5-0 or something like that, and
Yeah.
they don't have conferences or anything like that. They're just playing, man. They're just playing.
All right. Well, I think we got enough for like 3 weeks now on this show. We went a smidgen over, not that much. All right. For Coach Bo, this is the Chad saying we will see you for Rivals Wednesday morning. See you there.